Hi there, I'm Mary Susie from Bead Me a Story, and today I'm going to show you the Working for Peanuts bracelet. I call it Working for Peanuts because it is made using Farfalle beads, which look like a peanut. So these beads can be called peanut beads or berry beads or Farfalle beads. And they're pretty much interchangeable names, but the Farfalle tend to be named so when these are coming out of the Czech Republic, and they make ones that are a 6.5 millimeter thick, which is what we're going to be using today. And the reason is I wanted to make this on a little bit larger scale. It's easier to learn when you work larger first and then move to smaller. So you can make this in a 20 gauge 1/8 inch jump ring and use the traditional berry and peanut beads that are about 4 millimeters wide, and that will work just great. This weave requires an aspect ratio of 4, and the main difference in this one, in the larger version, is that where I held the beads, I actually used a slightly smaller gauge jump ring. So I'm using 19 gauge 3/16 jump rings to hold the beads, and everything else is 18 gauge 3/16 jump rings. And this is absolutely a beautiful weave. Back to Work is a very beginner weave, very easy to learn, and then adding to the beads to the outside just adds a whole new dimension to this project that I think you're gonna love. So I made a version in the pink, and then I just wanted to show you here that this particular version, which has crystal beads on the outside, so they're clear, I have a matte sea foam on this side, but I made this bracelet reversible, and on the other side I used matte lavender. And you can't necessarily see that other color on the other side. So this is nice because you can choose to wear it with different wardrobe choices. So I hope you enjoy this project and learn a lot from it. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start this project, I've gone ahead and taken a paper clip to get my project started with. You don't actually need to do this. If you would prefer to start your project on the clasp, then you can go ahead and do that. And you can do that with your first 2 jump rings. So these jump rings I have pre-closed. These are 18 gauge 3/16. And I wanted to put a little 19 gauge 3/16 right on top of an 18 gauge 3/16. And this was to show you that the ones that are going to be beaded, this is a slightly smaller size. And I wanted to do 19 gauge because it's going to fit through these holes of the beads much better. And just to mention that crystal or clear beads almost always have a little bit smaller hole than all the rest of the colors. I've found that time and time again, no matter what bead I buy. I love working with clear, but it does tend to have some smaller holes to it. So just be aware of that, but we're using a smaller gauge jump ring in order to accommodate that, but it's really just a 3/16. This is 18 gauge and this is 19 gauge. So this is 1 millimeter thick and this is 1.2 millimeter thick. Okay, so just so you see the difference. And the other jump rings, the matte sea foam and the matte lavender that we'll be using, those are also 18 gauge 3/16. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my first 2 jump rings onto the paper clip. Now I'm going to consider these vertical jump rings, and even if we were sideways, I'd probably still call them vertical, just mainly because what I'm seeing is not the whole side of the jump ring. I'm going to be seeing this straight on the outside. Okay, and then all the rest of the jump rings that I'm going to add to this, I'm going to be seeing through the hole of each of those jump rings. Okay, and we're going to make this project reversible, so that's exciting. Anytime we can make a 2-for-1, that's a good thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my matte sea foam and I'm just going to pass it through these 2 jump rings. I've got plenty of room. I'm using Xuron pliers. I've got chisel nose and 90-degree bent nose, but you could be using flat nose or chain nose or anything you want. I do like the Xuron. This is a beginner project, and I like the Xuron because they're very non-slip. They have a very non-slip surface. So when you're starting out, that's really helpful to you. Okay, so we'll lay this down, and you can see I've got the matte seafoam on here, and the matte seafoam is going to sit in the back. So this is going to create the color for one side. Now, I'm going to add my beaded jump rings next, and you can see that I preloaded these. You can definitely do that with this project, it's no problem. Or if you can put them on one at a time as you're loading these on. Okay, so what we're gonna do with these next two jump rings with beads is I'm gonna pass one through the vertical ring, or the color A ring, or the silver ring, whatever you would like me to call it. And I'm gonna pass it through just one of those jump rings. So in this case, I chose the one on the right side. And then we're gonna take our second jump ring with beads. Okay. And I'm going to pass it through the other vertical jump ring. So in this case, the left side silver jump ring. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that jump ring. And you can see I've got one on one side and one on the other. So that was sky blue that I was using in the 19 gauge 3/16 inch jump rings. Now our final jump ring in this sequence is going to be the lavender. And the lavender is going to create the color on the opposite side of the bracelet. So what I'm going to do with this lavender is I'm going to now pass this through both of these vertical jump rings, through the silver, through both of them, and that is going to lay on top. Okay, so I'm pretending that my lavender is the top because that's the last one that I added, and the seafoam green color is on the bottom, and that was the first one that I added. So I'm going to continue when I get back to a horizontal row next time to create it in that same way. So I'm going to show you this all straight through again. So the next thing we want to do is I'm going to take another vertical ring, and these vertical rings, to finish the row, they're going to actually finish this row and start a new row, need to be passing through the same 3 rings on each side that the first vertical row did. So I'm going to go down through the lavender, down through, I'm on the sky blue that's on the right, and then down through the seafoam green. Okay, so I'll let you see here that that went through 3 jump rings. See how it goes through both the purple, the sky blue, and the green. And then we'll close that jump ring. This weave is very easy once you get the hang of it. Okay, and then we're going to take another silver. Sorry, I didn't have any out here for myself yet. I'm going to take another silver, and now I'm going to pass through the other side. So let me flip it over so we have our front. Our front is the purple, so now we're going through the left side. And again, I'm passing through those same 3 jump rings. Okay, so see the lavender, the sky blue, and the seafoam. Okay, and now let me kind of lay this out so you can see it. I have it on the back side. So this is the back side. You can see the matte seafoam green. Let me make sure this is laying on the front side. Okay, so see how the silver rings are the vertical rings, and then all of the other 4 rings, the colored rings, are all the horizontal rings. So I can see down through the holes of all those. Okay, so this pair of vertical rings that I just added started a new row. So now we're going to go ahead and continue making the next row, just like we started that last row. We're going to start with our matte seafoam. Okay, that's going to be on the back. And then we're going to add our beaded jump rings. My beads fell off there. Okay, I'm going to add to the right vertical jump ring. Okay, and then I am going to take my next beaded jump ring. These are 19 gauge jump rings again, and I'm going to pass through the left vertical jump ring. I want to make sure it doesn't pass through anything else, just that one jump ring. Okay. And you can see how there's one on either side here. And then I'm going to add the lavender, the matte lavender. So the lavender is going to lay on top. So it's just passing through the two vertical silver jump rings that are there. And this is the last or fourth horizontal ring that we're going to add to this row. Okay, let me lay it down so you can see this. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is add our two vertical jump rings, which are color A or silver rings. Okay, and that's going to end this row, and that's going to start the next row. So you can see this is really a quite easy weave. I'm using Farfalle beads, which give me this wonderful water-like appearance because they're very bubbly looking, and the clear is just lovely. I have done this in some other colors. But Farfalle beads are just larger versions of a berry or a peanut bead, which is why I call this working for peanuts, okay? So this is about 6.5 millimeters wide, this bead is, okay? And the berry and peanut beads are more like 4, so it's a much smaller size, but you can also make this same weave in a micro version using 20 gauge jump rings and the peanut or berry beads. And when you do that, you just need an aspect ratio of 4, okay? Just like this one. And the only thing that didn't have an aspect ratio of 4 was this 19 gauge ring. However, I'm just using that to hold the beads, and that's sitting in between. So the aspect ratio wasn't all that important for this one particular bead. What was important was that my beads would sit properly. Okay, so you're seeing the front of this, again, with the pale lavender, with the pastel lavender, sorry, matte pastel lavender, and then here is the back of this with the matte seafoam, okay? And just to show you a little bit more of this working along, okay? That'll be the front. This will be the back, okay? So keep on working. Get this to the length that you want it to be. I'm gonna keep on working, and then I will come back to show you how to put the ends onto this. Okay, so you can see that I've finished the length of this bracelet. So here's our lavender side, and here is our matte seafoam side. And I'm going to add the clasp. Now, in order to do that, I've simply not added the vertical rows to the end of this. And I'm going to just take my vertical row jump rings, my color A jump rings, and I'm gonna pass through the lavender, the sky blue, and the matte seafoam. Matte lavender, I should have said. And I'm going to connect it to my clasp, one of the holes. So since there are two vertical vertical row jump rings, we're going to do a 2-hole clasp with this. And it's going to link right in. And again, I'm going through the matte lavender, the sky blue, and the matte sea foam, and through the other hole of the 2-hole clasp. Okay. And then the other thing I want to mention is I have gone ahead and I have treated my 2-hole clasp with some Renaissance wax. I just take a paper towel, rub it all over this, give it just a minute to dry, and then I buff it back off with the same paper towel. Really not a big deal to do this, but it is going to keep this clasp looking shiny and silver much longer. This is just a brass clasp, so you know, it will tarnish over time. And remember, people have different body chemistries, so some people tarnish things a whole lot. So it is important to do that. Okay, now here's our starting end. And like I said, you could have just started with the clasp on this end, but I don't do that because I make things in bits and pieces. So it would have been a lot easier if you're making especially more than one of these. Just go ahead and start it on the clasp from the start. But I'm just going to reopen each of these jump rings that were linked to the paper clip, and I'm going to link them to each hole of the clasp. And that is going to be it. So obviously you can wear this on either side, so you can accentuate the purple or accentuate the green side, and it's absolutely lovely. I have to say, I'm super happy with how this turned out. It is super sparkly. The crystal, I had a hard time using these beads because, as I said, the holes are a little bit smaller. I did throw off just a couple, maybe 2, that didn't fit onto the jump rings, but you can see the crystal gives you this wonderful watery, sparkly effect, and it looks great on both sides. And I just love it. This is gonna go great with my jewelry wardrobe. So I hope you love this project and learned a lot from it, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me.